In the quiet, almost serene ambience of her childhood home, Olivia Turner found herself standing in the kitchen, surrounded by the comforting smell of cinnamon and vanilla. It was a scene that should have been perfect, the final touches on her father's 70th birthday cake, the music softly humming in the background, a track from an old jazz album her mother, Sharon, adored. The sunlight poured through the windows, casting a golden glow on the countertop, illuminating the fond memories of a family that once felt unshakable. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, a sense of unease gnawing at Olivia's insides. Everything was meant to be a celebration. Her father, Michael, had reached a milestone, and yet Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She stood there, spoon in hand, staring at the cake batter as if the simple task could somehow ground her. But it didn't, not today. The kitchen was bustling with activity, her mother directing the party preparations with an energy that almost made Olivia feel small in comparison. Sharon, at 65, was still a whirlwind, orchestrating the event with military precision. "Olivia, have you seen the tableclothers?" Her voice cut through the air, muffled by the rustling of decorations in the living room. Olivia quickly wiped her hands on her apron, shouting back, in the hall closet, "Mom!" She caught a glimpse of herself in the oven's glass door. There she was, -35, with dark curls escaping her ponytail and faint lines at the corners of her eyes. She looked tired, but it wasn't just the hours spent on party preparations or the stress of making everything perfect. It was something deeper, something heavier that she couldn't pinpoint. A nagging feeling that had been following her for days, even weeks. Something about Patrick, her husband, was off. Patrick, the man she had married, the man she had built her life with. Today, he had been distant, preoccupied. A few hours ago, he'd left in a rush, barely glancing at her as he muttered about a work emergency. The words felt hollow, and yet she couldn't place why. Olivia had been married to Patrick for years now, and while work had always been demanding, today felt different. Today, there was a disconnect, and it was growing. As she stirred the cake batter, the door creaked open, and Patrick walked in. His suit jacket was slung over one shoulder, his phone pressed to his ear. The easy charm he once had, the smile that had drawn her in all those years ago, now seemed strained, forced. He ended the call, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. He offered her a tight smile, but there was no warmth in it. "Work emergency, I've got to head out now," he said quickly. "Patrick, we're swamped. Dad's party is tonight," Olivia protested, her voice catching in her throat. But he was already heading for the door, his hand running through his dark hair. "I'll be back in time to help, I promise." The words were empty, and Olivia could feel the knot in her chest tighten. "Sorry, Sharon," he called out, already halfway out the door. Duty calls. Olivia opened her mouth to say something more, but her mother's voice called from the other room, and she was gone. "Leave. I'll make it up to you," Patrick's voice echoed through the house, but it was already too late. His absence, his lack of attention, spoke louder than any words he could say. As Olivia stood there, staring after him, something inside her snapped. This wasn't like Patrick. It wasn't like him to skip out on family events, let alone his own father-in-law's milestone birthday. But she didn't have time to dwell on it, not now. There were too many details to finalize for the party, and Sharon was already muttering under her breath as she rummaged through a drawer, always an excuse. "Your father was the same way at that age." Olivia forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow. She turned back to the batter, trying to focus on the rhythm of the spoon as it swirled in the bowl, trying to block out the growing sense of unease. And then, the buzz of her phone interrupted her thoughts. A text from an unknown number. Her thumb hovered over the screen as she debated whether or not to open it. Something told her she should, something told her she needed to. The message read, "Check your husband's storage unit." "You'll want to see this." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. She hadn't thought about that storage unit in years. Patrick had insisted on keeping it when they moved, claiming that there were old things they might need someday. Olivia had dismissed it as just another one of Patrick's quirks, the need to hold on to things just in case. But this felt different. Who would send her this message? Why now? Olivia felt her stomach churn. The cake batter seemed to lose its color in the bowl. The room felt suddenly small, the air too thick to breathe. Her mother's voice broke through her thoughts. "Olivia, are you okay?" Sharon stood in the doorway, frowning, her concern evident. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Olivia quickly said, slipping her phone into her pocket. "Just a reminder about the caterer. I need to make a quick call." Sharon raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "Well, hurry up. We've got guests arriving in a few hours." Olivia nodded, her mind racing. The message, the storage unit. The strange urgency in her gut that told her to go. What was in that storage unit? She should ignore it, focus on the party. Focus on her father's birthday. But the words from the text echoed in her head. "You'll want to see this." Her hands shook slightly as she untied her apron. The pull of curiosity was too strong. She needed to know, she needed to understand. She didn't know why, but she had to. She rushed to the door. "Mom, I need to run an errand. I'll be back in half an hour." Her mother's voice was sharp. "An errand, now?" "It's urgent," Olivia lied, echoing Patrick's words from earlier. As she climbed into her car and sped away, her heart hammered in her chest. The sound of the jazz music from the kitchen faded into the distance, replaced by the thudding of her pulse. Her mind was a whirlwind. What was she about to uncover? If you're curious about what Olivia discovers in the storage unit, the truth that will change everything, and how this revelation shatters her world, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more. We've got plenty of twists, shocking secrets, and emotional journeys ahead. Now, here's a question for you to think about. Would you confront the truth, even if it meant losing everything? A yes, always choose the truth, no matter the consequences. B no, sometimes it's better to keep the peace and ignore the signs. Comment below with your answer, or B, and let's see where you stand on this. Your thoughts matter. Olivia's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, the harsh grip of uncertainty tightening around her chest with every mile she drove. Her mind raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of questions that she had tried to suppress. What was it that she would find in Patrick's storage unit? Would it confirm the doubts that had begun to gnaw at her from the moment he left the house so abruptly? Every part of her wanted to ignore it, wanted to believe that this was just some cruel prank or a mistake. But deep down, she knew that she couldn't turn back. The weight of that text message, the mysterious, cryptic warning to check your husband's storage unit, felt like a hook in her side, pulling her forward, dragging her towards something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. As she turned the corner and entered the old, worn-down storage facility, she could almost hear the sound of her own breath, shallow and quick. The place had always been a symbol of forgotten things, old furniture, a box of seasonal decorations, things they never quite needed but couldn't bear to part with. Patrick had insisted on renting the unit after they moved into their new home. "You never know when you'll need something," he'd said with that usual nonchalance, as if holding on to years of old junk was more about sentiment than practicality. Olivia had never questioned it, she'd never given it a second thought, until now. The gravel crunched beneath her tires as she parked near Unit 142. The lot was eerily quiet, and the dull grey of the storage units loomed like silent sentinels, each one holding its own secrets, its own past. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest as she reached for the key, a small, cold object that suddenly felt like a key to an entirely different life, one that she had never truly known. The padlock on Unit 142 was rusted, its age apparent in the way it protested when she turned the key, but it gave way with a reluctant click. As the door creaked open, a rush of stale, musty air greeted her, carrying the scent of dust and forgotten memories. The space inside was dim, lit only by a weak overhead bulb that barely cut through the shadows. Boxes were piled haphazardly, some neatly labelled in Patrick's sharp handwriting, tax records 2015, Olivia's college stuff. The disorder seemed almost normal at first glance, the sort of mess anyone would expect in a place like this. Yet, with every step she took into the cluttered space, her anxiety deepened, a quiet, insistent voice telling her that she was on the verge of uncovering something far more unsettling than mere forgotten belongings. She ran her fingers along a stack of boxes, trying to focus on the mundane, telling herself that maybe the message was nothing. Maybe it was just a mistake, a prank by someone who didn't understand the consequences of their actions. But then, as she stepped deeper into the unit, her foot nudged something cold and glass. She crouched down, her heart racing as she pulled out a wine bottle, its label faded but still legible. It was cheap, nothing like the bottles they drank at home, and yet it was clean, the cork barely worn, her breath caught in her throat. Patrick didn't drink much, certainly not wine like this. He had always preferred a beer at a barbecue, a glass of wine at dinner, but nothing like this. The bottle was too pristine, too untouched, a sick feeling twisted in her stomach. Who had been here, and why hadn't Patrick told her? She set the bottle down, her hands shaking as she continued her search. She felt as though she were moving through a haze, a sense of disbelief clouding her every thought. As her eyes scanned the shelves, she noticed nothing out of the ordinary at first, just old photo albums, a box of Christmas decorations, a guitar case that Patrick had promised he would play again someday. But as she stepped further into the corner, her foot brushed against something else. It was small, crumpled, and plastic. She picked it up, her breath hitching as she saw what it was, a condom wrapper. Her hands went numb, the world around her seemed to fall away, the dim light of the storage unit fading into the background as she stared at the small, innocuous piece of plastic in her hands. It was unmistakable, the brand, the size, everything about it screamed that this wasn't just some random object left behind by a visitor. This was intentional, this was a message. It was as if the universe had conspired to throw this in her face, to make her confront the truth that she had been unwilling to see. Olivia sank down onto a nearby box, her knees buckling beneath her. The shock hit her in waves, her breath catching in her chest as she tried to comprehend what she had just found. Patrick, her husband. The man she had trusted with everything, the man she had built a life with, had been hiding something from her. It wasn't just the wine bottle. It wasn't just the condom wrapper, it was everything. The lies, the secrecy, the betrayal. For a moment, Olivia's mind spun with 1,000 questions, each one more painful than the last. How long had this been going on? Who else was involved? And how could she have been so blind? The anger, the hurt, the confusion were overwhelming, suffocating her, but beneath it all, there was a cold clarity settling in. Patrick had been lying to her, and now, with nothing but the silence of this forgotten unit, Olivia had the proof. Her phone buzzed, breaking through the haze of her thoughts. Patrick's name flashed on the screen. She stared at it for a long moment, the weight of the phone in her hand feeling heavier than it ever had before. Should she answer? Should she confront him now? Her heart raced, and her thoughts scrambled for control. But instead of answering, she stuffed the condom wrapper and wine bottle into her purse, locking the storage unit behind her with shaking hands. As she climbed back into her car, the reality of what she had uncovered began to settle in. The jazz music from the house was now a distant memory, replaced by the pounding of her own heart. Her mind raced with a mixture of fear and determination. What was she supposed to do now? What was the next step? She couldn't just go back to the party, back to the fake smiles and meaningless chatter. She couldn't pretend that everything was okay anymore, not after this. The drive back felt like an eternity. Every passing second was filled with the echo of her thoughts, the confrontation that was coming. The life she had known, the life she had built with Patrick, would never be the same again. But as she turned onto the familiar street, as she approached the house where her family awaited, Olivia knew that there was no turning back. The truth was out there now, and no matter how much it hurt, she would face it. This was only the beginning, and she was ready to confront whatever came next. Olivia felt the weight of the evening settle in her chest as she parked her car in the driveway, the sound of her heartbeat louder than the hum of the engine. The house, glowing with warmth, was alive with activity. Laughter floated out from the kitchen, the sounds of guests mingling, her mother orchestrating everything with an air of control that she always wore so easily. But inside, Olivia felt like a stranger in her own skin. Everything she had worked for, everything she thought she knew about her life, was unraveling before her eyes. Her hands, still trembling, gripped the car keys, her mind racing back to what she had found in the storage unit. Patrick, she had always trusted him, never once doubting his words, his promises, the future they were building together. But now, after what she had uncovered, how could she look at him the same way again? The pieces of her life, the life they had built together, was scattered in front of her like shards of broken glass, too sharp to touch without cutting deeper. He had betrayed her, not just with the lies, but with the quiet certainty that she would never know the truth unless she stumbled upon it. As she walked toward the front door, the voices from inside seemed muffled, distant. She could hear the clink of glass, the murmur of conversation, but it felt like a world apart from her own. Patrick was inside, somewhere among the chaos, his smile likely already in place, his charm acting as a mask for the man he had become. He had played his part perfectly for years, the loving husband, the devoted father, the man who knew how to make everyone feel special. But now she knew the truth. He was none of those things. Inside, the house was alive with the hum of conversation. Her father, Michael, was holding court at the head of the table, recounting old stories to a room full of relatives. Sharon was flitting between guests, making sure everything was perfect, her silver hair tucked neatly into a bun as always. Olivia's eyes scanned the room, her gaze searching for Patrick. There he was, by the kitchen counter, pouring a drink. He looked normal, in fact. His posture was relaxed, his smile easy, but Olivia saw the slight tightness around his eyes, the way his jaw clenched when he caught her gaze. He knew, he had to know what she had discovered. And for a moment, their worlds collided in the briefest of glances. She didn't approach him immediately, no, she couldn't do that. Not here, not in the middle of this facade. This was supposed to be a celebration, her father's birthday. It was supposed to be perfect, but the truth had to come out, it had to. Olivia's hands felt cold at her sides as she made her way through the crowded room. She could feel the weight of every eye on her as she walked past her family, every step a reminder of the life she thought she had. She reached the kitchen door, where Patrick was still standing, his eyes scanning his phone as if he hadn't noticed her approach. But she knew better, he had noticed. He always did. Patrick, her voice was quiet but steady, cutting through the low murmur of the room. He looked up, a flash of recognition crossing his face before his smile appeared, thin and forced. "Hey, leave," he said, his voice light. "Everything good." "Everything's fine," she said, but the words felt foreign coming out of her mouth. "We need to talk." His smile faltered for the briefest of moments, but it was enough. She saw it. She saw the hesitation, the flicker of something he didn't want her to catch. For a second, Olivia thought he might run, might turn away and pretend like nothing had changed. But she couldn't let him do that, not anymore. He put his phone down and stepped closer, but there was something off in his movements. He was no longer the man she had once known, the man who had held her when things got hard, the man who had promised her the world. Now, he was just a stranger, a liar. "We can talk later," he began, the edge in his voice growing more pronounced. "There's a lot going on right now. Leave. The party." "This can't wait," Olivia interrupted, her voice firm. "Not anymore." The room was spinning, but it felt like everything had come to a standstill. She could hear the distant hum of the party behind her, but it seemed so far away, as if nothing mattered but this moment, this confrontation. Her pulse quickened as she felt the truth rise in her chest, burning to be spoken. "I know about the storage unit," she said, the words falling from her lips like a weight, a stone that had been lodged deep inside her for days. "I know what you've been hiding." For a moment, Patrick didn't say anything. His face went blank, his expression carefully guarded, but Olivia saw the shift in him. She saw the way his shoulders tensed, the way his lips pressed into a thin line. She could hear the lie in his silence, could feel the guilt that was radiating from him like heat from a fire. "The storage unit," he said, his voice rising slightly. "Leave. You're overreacting. That place is just a bunch of old junk, nothing more." Olivia stood her ground, her gaze unwavering. "No, Patrick, it's not just junk. I found the wine bottle, the condom wrapper. I know what's been going on, who you've been with." The color drained from his face, and for the first time, Olivia saw something other than the polished man she had married. She saw the cracks that had been hidden for so long. He stepped back, as if trying to distance himself from her words, but it was too late. The truth was out. "I never wanted you to find out like this," Patrick said, his voice strained, the mask of the perfect husband slipping away. "I was going to tell you, leave. I just I didn't know how." This was a mistake, a stupid mistake. The words hit her like a slap. A mistake. Is that how you're going to spin it? After everything, after years of lying, this is just a mistake. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. His eyes flickered to the door, to the guests who were oblivious to the storm raging between them. I don't care about the party, Patrick, Olivia said, her voice low but fierce. I care about the truth, and I care about what you've done. The tension between them was palpable, thick with the weight of unspoken emotions. Olivia felt like she was drowning in it, her chest tight with the knowledge that this was the moment everything changed. You're right, Patrick said finally, his voice quieter now. It was a mistake, a one-time thing, but it doesn't mean anything. I swear it, you're the one I love. Olivia shook her head, the tears welling up before she could stop them. No, Patrick, you don't get to lie to me anymore. You don't get to tell me that what I've found doesn't mean anything. This is everything. For a moment, it seemed like Patrick was going to reach for her, to pull her back into the familiar, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, but Olivia was done with that. She was done pretending that everything was fine, done pretending that the life they had was enough to heal the wound he had inflicted. I can't do this anymore, she whispered, her voice breaking. I can't live like this. Patrick stood there, silent, his face unreadable. And in that moment, Olivia knew that this was the end. Not just of their marriage, but of the life she had once known. The truth had come crashing down, and with it, the realization that she had to let go. No more lies, no more pretending. Without another word, Olivia turned away, her heart pounding in her chest as she walked toward the door. The party, the guests, the birthday celebration, none of it mattered now. The life she had built with Patrick was over. The truth had set her free, but it had also left her with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. And as she stepped outside, the cool night air hit her face, a reminder that there was no going back. The house was quieter now. The soft hum of conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the laughter of her father's guests seemed distant, like muffled echoes. Olivia stood at the doorway, her hand frozen on the handle, her heart still pounding in her chest. She had left Patrick standing in the kitchen, his face pale, his mouth open, but no words came. The lie was too big, too deep to cover up with empty apologies or half-hearted justifications. The truth had been spoken, and in its wake, everything was falling apart. She didn't know what to feel in that moment. The anger was there, sharp and biting, cutting through her veins like fire. The betrayal, the years of lies, the secrets he had hidden so carefully from her, all of it hurt in a way she had never imagined possible. But underneath the anger, there was a cold clarity. A part of her, the part that had always tried to make excuses, tried to fix things, was gone. There was nothing left to fix. She couldn't go back. She couldn't undo the damage. The truth was too final. It had changed everything, and she wasn't sure she could ever go back to being the woman she was before. The tears didn't come at first. They had been replaced by a strange numbness that settled over her like a heavy blanket. She had spent so many years believing in the idea of love, in the hope that no matter how hard things got, they could work through it. She had believed that Patrick was her partner, that they were a team, and that nothing could break the bond they had built together. But now, standing at the edge of the life they had shared, Olivia realized that the foundation of that bond had never been as strong as she had convinced herself it was. It was fragile, fragile and broken. She needed space. She needed to breathe. The air outside was cool, crisp, and the stillness of the night wrapped around her like a temporary refuge. Olivia leaned against the car, looking up at the stars, the weight of everything pressing down on her. She had always been strong, or at least, she had tried to be. She had always believed that strength meant enduring, that it meant keeping things together, no matter the cost. But now, standing here alone, she realized that true strength wasn't about holding everything in. It was about facing the truth, no matter how ugly it was, and allowing yourself to feel it, to live through it. She thought about the years with Patrick, the shared dreams, the quiet mornings together, the way he had once made her feel like the most important person in the world. How had it all gone so wrong? The love they had, the love she thought was unshakable, had been built on lies. And now, it was crashing down around her. She had to face it, She had to face the reality that the man she had loved wasn't the man she thought he was. She thought about their marriage, about all the little moments, the quiet conversations, the plans they had made. It all felt so far away now, like a dream that had turned into a nightmare. She had trusted him with everything, her heart, her future, the family they had talked about. And in return, he had shattered her, he had taken their marriage, their trust, and broken it into pieces, leaving her to pick up the wreckage. But as she stood there, the realization began to take shape. She couldn't keep living this lie. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. The truth was too painful to ignore, too real to brush aside. And for the first time, Olivia understood that sometimes walking away was the bravest thing you could do. Sometimes the only way to move forward was to leave the past behind. She knew she had to make a decision that would change everything. She couldn't stay with Patrick, not after what he had done. Not after the way he had betrayed her, and not after everything she had uncovered. She had to leave. She had to take control of her life again, to find her own path, to reclaim the parts of herself that had been lost in the marriage. She couldn't let him keep her trapped in a life that was built on lies. But the decision wasn't easy, it never is. The part of her that still loved Patrick, that still cared for him, made it harder. She had spent so many years with him, so many years trusting him. How could she just throw it all away? But then the answer came to her, clear and undeniable. She wasn't throwing it away. She was choosing herself. She was choosing her own worth, her own dignity. And for the first time in a long time, she realized that she deserved better. She deserved honesty, she deserved respect, and she deserved a love that was true. The decision to leave wasn't just about Patrick, it was about her. It was about reclaiming her life and finding her own happiness again. The thought of being free, of living a life without the weight of betrayal hanging over her, was liberating. But it also terrified her. What would life be like without him? What would life be like without the family she had known? Would she be able to rebuild? Could she ever trust again? Olivia knew the road ahead would be hard. She would face rejection, disappointment, and the sting of losing everything she thought was certain. But she also knew that it was the only way forward. Staying with Patrick would mean living in a cage of lies, pretending that everything was fine when it was anything but. It would mean sacrificing her happiness, her peace of mind, and her self-respect for the sake of a marriage that was built on deception. As she made her way back inside, Olivia could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her, but also the spark of something new. The moment she stepped through the door, she knew the conversation with Patrick would be the hardest one yet. But it had to happen, for her future. She found him standing near the dining room, his back to her, trying to engage in small talk with a few guests. The charade was over. Olivia walked up to him, her feet steady, her heart calm. She didn't need to say much, he knew she knew. And there was no going back. Patrick, she said, her voice steady, no trace of the fear that had once gripped her. I'm done. His eyes widened, but there was no apology, no realization of what he had lost. His shoulders slumped, and he opened his mouth to speak, but Olivia didn't let him. She was done listening to excuses. I'm leaving, she continued, her voice unwavering. I can't do this anymore, not after everything. The guests continued to mingle, oblivious to the storm raging between them. But for Olivia, this moment was everything. The decision had been made. And she was walking away from the past, ready to face the unknown, ready to start again. No more lies, no more pretending. Olivia turned and walked away, not looking back. This was her moment. This was her life, and she was finally choosing herself. The decision had been made, and with it came the first taste of freedom Olivia had felt in a long time. But freedom didn't feel like what she had imagined. It wasn't the relief she had hoped for, the weight of the world lifting from her shoulders. It felt more like a quiet, unsettling silence, the kind you feel when you realize that everything you knew, everything you thought was real, is now gone. She wasn't sure what to expect from this new chapter, but the only thing she knew for certain was that she couldn't go back. The life she had built, the life with Patrick, was no longer hers to live. And that was something she had to accept. Days passed in a blur as she navigated the strange emptiness of her new reality. The house that had once been filled with the noise of family gatherings and shared moments now stood silent, the echoes of her past life reverberating in every room. Patrick was gone, and with him, a part of Olivia's identity, the part that had been tied to him for so long. She had spent so many years living for him, supporting him, trying to make their life together work. But now, there was no more us, there was only her. And as terrifying as that thought was, it was also a relief. The first few nights after the divorce were the hardest. Olivia lay awake in the quiet, her thoughts swirling with doubts, questions, and regret. The weight of loneliness settled on her chest like a heavy blanket. She had always been the type to give everything to her relationships, to make sacrifices for the people she loved. And now, for the first time, she was faced with the reality that she had to learn to love herself again. That was the hardest part, learning to trust herself, to forgive herself for the years spent in a marriage that wasn't what it seemed. Learning to see her worth, independent of anyone else's validation. But as the days stretched into weeks, a small shift began to take place within her. She started to realize that there was strength in the vulnerability she had allowed herself to feel. She wasn't broken, as she had once feared. She was healing, and that was something to be proud of. Olivia began to embrace the small moments of joy that came with living on her own. The quiet mornings when she could take her time, sipping coffee and reading a book without interruptions. The evenings when she could make dinner for herself, savoring every bite without needing to pretend that everything was perfect. She found solace in the simplicity of her new life. It wasn't glamorous or filled with grand gestures, but it was hers. It was real. The most surprising part of it all was how much room there was for growth. She had spent so much time trying to make things work with Patrick that she had lost sight of her own needs, her own desires. She had stopped asking herself what she wanted out of life. But now, she had the space to rediscover herself, and so, she began slowly, at first. She started with small things, signing up for a yoga class, something she had always wanted to try but had never had the time for. It felt good to do something just for her, to stretch her body and mind in new ways. The more she practiced, the more she felt her confidence returning, her sense of self becoming stronger with each passing day. She began to explore new hobbies, things she had put off for years. Olivia had always loved painting, but somewhere along the way, life had taken over, and she had let that part of herself slip away. But now, with time to herself, she picked up a brush again, and it was like coming home. The colors on the canvas became an expression of her emotions, her fears, her hopes. She poured her heart into the strokes, and with each painting, she found herself healing a little bit more. It wasn't just about creating something beautiful, it was about reclaiming a part of herself that had been buried for too long. Olivia also started to reconnect with old friends, people she had drifted away from during her marriage. She had spent so much time focusing on Patrick and their life together that she had neglected the relationships that had once brought her so much joy. But now, as she stepped back into those friendships, she felt a sense of belonging she hadn't realized she had been missing. There was laughter again, real, unforced laughter, and for the first time in months, Olivia felt alive. She began to see that the love and support she had been searching for from Patrick could come from within herself and from the people who had always been there for her. But perhaps the most profound change of all came when Olivia stopped searching for closure. She had spent so long waiting for some grand moment, some apology or explanation from Patrick that would make everything make sense. But she realized that closure wasn't something someone else could give her. It was something she had to find for herself. She didn't need his validation. She didn't need to understand why he had done what he did. The answers didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that she was free. Free from the lies, free from the hurt, and free to build the life she had always deserved. As Olivia moved forward, she found herself looking to the future with a sense of cautious optimism. She knew there would be hard days ahead, days when the loneliness would creep in and the memories of her marriage would feel too heavy to bear. But she also knew that she had the strength to face them. She had already overcome the hardest part, walking away. Now, she was ready to embrace whatever came next. There were still moments when she questioned her decision, moments when the fear of being alone crept in, but those moments were fewer now. Olivia had found a peace within herself, a quiet confidence that had been buried for so long. And with that, she began to see the world in a new light. The possibilities felt endless. She was no longer defined by her past, by the person she had been in her marriage. She was Olivia, and that was enough. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but Olivia knew she was on the right path. She had let go of the life she thought she wanted in order to find the life she needed. And in that process, she had found herself again. She was no longer waiting for someone else to make her happy. She had learned, the hard way, that happiness came from within. It was something she could create for herself, something she could build every day. As she stood in her new apartment, looking out at the ocean beyond, Olivia knew that her journey was far from over. She had just begun to rebuild, to discover who she was outside of her marriage. And for the first time in a long time, she was excited to see where life would take her next. In life, there are moments when everything feels like it's falling apart. The familiar structures you've built around yourself crumble, and you find yourself standing at the precipice of an uncertain future. But in these moments of breakdowns, there often lies an incredible opportunity for growth. Olivia's story is one of profound personal transformation, from the pain of betrayal to the strength that arises when one confronts the truth and chooses to rebuild. It's a reminder that the hardest challenges can often bring the most meaningful change if we are brave enough to face them. After everything Olivia experienced, from the devastating discovery of her husband's lies to the public revelation that shattered her family's illusions, she was left with a choice: to stay in the familiar pain or to walk away and start anew. It's in this moment of crisis that many of us falter, unsure whether we should endure the heartache or fight for something different. Olivia made the brave decision to walk away, to prioritize herself and her well-being over the life she had once known. And that choice marked the beginning of her journey toward healing. This journey was not easy, it never is. There were sleepless nights, moments of doubt, and the fear of being alone. But as she allowed herself to grieve and process, something extraordinary began to happen. She rediscovered who she was. She found new passions, reconnected with old friends, and ultimately built a new life on her terms. It's easy to think that when we lose something important, a relationship, a career, a dream, we lose ourselves as well. But Olivia's story proves that even in loss, there is space to grow, to redefine who we are, and to reclaim our happiness. One of the most profound lessons from Olivia's journey is the idea of personal responsibility. At some point, we all face difficult situations, whether in love, work, or family. And while it's easy to blame others for our misfortunes, true healing begins when we take responsibility for our own growth. Olivia didn't wait for Patrick to apologize or for anyone to validate her pain. She chose to take the reins of her own life, to forgive herself for the past, and to move forward with clarity and strength. This is a critical lesson for all of us. We cannot wait for external factors or other people to give us permission to heal. We must take that power back into our own hands. Another vital lesson is the importance of self-love and self-worth. Olivia spent so much of her life living for others, building her identity around the expectations of her husband, her family, and society. But when everything came crashing down, she was forced to ask herself, who am I without all these external definitions? In doing so, she discovered a profound truth. Her worth was never tied to anyone else's actions or opinions. She was worthy of love, success, and happiness simply because she existed. And that's something all of us need to remember. We don't need to prove our worth to anyone. It's intrinsic, and it's something we must first recognize within ourselves. So, how can we apply these lessons to our own lives? First and foremost, it's important to embrace change, even when it feels like the world is falling apart. Change is not something to fear, but something to be embraced. It's an opportunity to shed old skins and grow into something stronger. When faced with challenges, whether big or small, ask yourself, how can I learn from this? How can I grow? What part of me can I reclaim that I've lost along the way? This mindset shift turns obstacles into opportunities. Next, take responsibility for your own healing. It's natural to want others to apologize, to make things right, but sometimes the only person who can heal your wounds is you. Forgiveness, not for the other person's sake, but for your own peace, is essential. It's a powerful tool in freeing yourself from the past and allowing yourself to step into the future with a clean slate. And lastly, never forget that you are worthy. Your worth is not tied to how others treat you or how successful you appear to be. It's intrinsic, and it should be cherished and protected. Take time each day to remind yourself of your value, to love yourself, and to make choices that honor that self-love. Whether it's through setting boundaries, practicing self-care, or simply spending time doing what makes you happy, prioritize yourself. Olivia's journey is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It shows us that while life may knock us down, it's up to us to rise again, stronger and wiser than before. So, as you move forward in your own life, remember this: you are capable of more than you think. You are worthy of all the love and happiness the world has to offer. Don't be afraid to let go of what no longer serves you and embrace the life that is waiting for you on the other side of your fears. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What is one thing you've learned from a difficult experience that helped you grow? Please share your answer in the comments section below. Let's learn from each other and inspire one another with our journeys. And if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps me continue creating meaningful content, and every little bit, whether it's a like, a comment, or a small donation, goes a long way in helping me keep making valuable videos for you. I may be older now, but I'm dedicated to making a difference and sharing knowledge that can truly impact lives. Your support, in whatever form, motivates me to keep going. Thank you for being a part of this journey.